Okay, here we are in DAK, about to enter the September turn of 41. I haven't set up the reinforcements and whatnot for September. Don't know what they look like. I guess we could take a quick peek. Doesn't look like a hell of a lot for the Commonwealth. And for the Axis, they're getting a pretty fair pile of stuff and some exchanges that we don't know, which direction they go in. Again, unlike Desert Fox, your exchange units aren't going to be any better sometimes. So just something to have in mind. And it's kind of funny, like I sent stuff to the Mideast. I figured I'd get it back someday, maybe, I'm not sure that I would have sent the units that I did, knowing now that they will never come back. Why do they have boxes there? I don't know. Well, because it fills up and now nothing more can go. So what's the story so far? You've heard this a lot of times. Look, the Brits didn't succeed in in driving the Italians out of East Libya, and so the Tobruk Bardia area was all still Italian. They were able to come back, take Mersa Matruh without much help from the Germans. And then the Axis forces managed to drive the Commonwealth back to the Nile, basically, in this canal line. But they haven't been able to cross it. And after a little bit of excitement where some special forces made mistakes throughout this game, and managed to do some special attacks on Churchill's orders, which otherwise would have been a disastrous situation where I would have had to try to cross the river to attack with real units, like might well have opened up the crossing to the Axis by doing that. It certainly would have been more exciting. Probably the Brits would have gotten their asses kicked in the fights. It probably wouldn't have just opened things up, but then the Axis might have attacked back, and that might not have gone well either. Just as a matter of, the river crossings are hard. Since then, we have basically been shipping resources around. The Brits are trying to get up enough replacement points to be able to conduct an attack across the river south of the Axis position. The Axis initially did not invest like the Cairo-Helwan crossings, which meant that the Brits were going to be able to cross fairly easily and degrade a position that I had built across here. I decided that position was simply not effective, and that I could use less troops to defend. Well, it's actually not the case, is it? What the hell are these? Those are all artillery? Not all. Yeah, those forces are in place to support both. There's no crossing over here, so that artillery is just supporting the two units. I don't know why this other artillery is there. We'll figure that out later. The Brits have refused to just say, look, this is going to be the static line, because they think they can cross down here and launch an attack that way if they get a headquarters or whatever. Attempting to do so might weaken their position enough, might cause issues, I don't know. We shall see. One thing I can tell you, the Axis can do this too. I've been saying, they can't do it. Well, actually they can. They've got a trace supply route there. If they get their dump situation good enough, they can, because they can trace along the road. The problem is attacking the position at Helwan might not be all that easy either. So both sides have an opportunity to use that. I'm not sure the Axis has seen it yet, but the Commonwealth certainly is aware of it, and that's why they keep saying, nope, no, 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 I don't want to quit yet. I don't want to quit. But it's not like they have a huge buildup of forces, and it looks to me like the Axis is getting more more reinforcements coming in this upcoming month than the Brits are. And the Brits have been getting these, withdrawal demands that keep their force size about the same. So maybe it's time to consider going back on the offensive with the Axis in the same fashion that the Brits have been doing. And there's no reason we couldn't do it here instead, except the problem with that is we don't really gain anything by being there. If we can undermine this Helvan bridge, we gain something important. Look, we could try to fight our way through to Cairo, but or upward. This was the key, is that this is sitting on a conjunction, on a fork of the river, and is actually behind the river in both places, which means it can't be attacked. Actually, you can't cross the Nile at all. So then the attack would have to come across here, and who the hell knows. But yeah, if the Axis starts building up a large enough force, I may well send something across this way. My tanks and everything don't mean a hell of a lot. They're probably best used down here. Unfortunately, I got 15th Panzer up here because it's a good unit, and that is, like, the division is really strong, and that is absolutely vital. I cannot lose that. My whole position collapses if I lose that. Anything else I lose, I can probably recover from and at least withdraw back. But if I lose this and the Brits are able to cut through, they've just cut everything off. Of course, I do have now a supply dump here, which I've been debating the value of, but it starts becoming a lot more valuable if I'm thinking about that crossing. So yeah, maybe the Axis is beginning to realize an opportunity here. Things are clearly too dark right now unless I turn on some lights, but while I'm playing Raid, I was looking over some of the comments, both for DAK and DAK 2. Part of it is I wanted to see some of the differentiation between the two games. I don't think there's much other than component quality, but I may be mistaken there. In DAK, both are rated fairly high, 8.1, 8.3. I mean, how much better can you expect for a monster war game when it comes down to it? And in terms of DAK, it was fairly early in the series, so it might have caught some people who, weren't already hooked on the OCS stuff, who didn't like it and whatnot. And of course, a lot of people who already liked DAK went out and bought DAK too. So in terms of ratings, it looks like it's doing fine. But I looked at some of the comments, and because I consider the comments kind of more important than the composite ratings and seeking things out. There wasn't a lot negative on DAK, but when I got to DAK 2, there were a fair amount of, I saw maybe one comment that kind of reflects my thoughts on this, at least some of my more negative thoughts. But when I got to DAK 2, I think I ran into quite a few more who were like, seeing some of the issues with it. Some of them different from what I see. For example, one person thought very much, it's talked about as a low counter density game, and it's true, there's less counters, but in terms of the counter density at the front, it's fairly high because there's such small units, which was an interesting point. I don't see that as that important particularly, but there definitely are some who seem to think that, look, it's going to turn into a stalemate, and there's just too much fiddly effort going on. People who seem to be okay with other OCS games, who kind of see that this isn't the perfect the perfect situation for it. Now, the funny thing is, for the original DAK reviews, almost all of the comments were like, oh, this is the perfect situation for an OCS game. I'm not sure that they played it, or certainly the campaign game, very, very much of it. Some of them did. But, you know, it really feels like you're doing way too much. I don't want to say logistical work, because the logistical work is the effort. It is sort of the purpose behind OCS games. I don't have a problem with the logistics being a focus. If I did, I wouldn't like OCS to any degree, right? But it feels like there's too much that means nothing, right? That you're too much of the time you're tracing routes through terrain again and again. Sometimes, sure, you can rely on the stop point cities and the numerical results, as long as the weather's not interfering badly. But you know, I just really think that a separate card, and they have a separate card to allow you to handle getting rid of maps, getting rid of one map or something. I think that a separate card could represent most of what's going on in areas of the map that you're not actually playing in. And you could actually play this game on sort of a scrolling map, right? Where you have some resources and forces that you have to devote to, you know, to defending areas, just in case they get penetrated or whatever. But for the most part, you wouldn't need this whole scope out there. But beyond that, that separate little sheet that would allow you to abstract away, you know, I don't know. Let me get a light on here because I do want to kind of point some things out. So early in the game, I absolutely do not need, you know, the delta, right? I barely need it now, and I'm right up on there. But at this point in the game, there's forces here. I got no problem with that. I could have like a Tobruk salient box that I just have on that separate sheet, and that could contain the forces that are here, and I wouldn't have to have this map in play if I'm representing them there until the front starts to move. Now, the front can move very quickly, so you actually do need the space to be able to lay the whole map out at once. And I would say that this part would be absolutely, like the whole thing would be an option, right? But this sort of abstraction would change the game a little bit. The other thing, though, is you could leave the map entirely set up and simply have transit boxes that, you know, you're paying movement points per turn to move through. And if there's weather involved on a map or something, it could just handle that. That handle two big things that I'd like to see abstracted away, because I'm spending so much time on them. One is transferring the supplies themselves long distances. That could be easily, again, it would require a little bit more complexity, because you'd have to add rules to handle that abstraction, because the system still needs to have the supply rules. It's to be an OCS game, it still has to have those core supply rules for when you're at the front. But for the transition from Tripoli all the way up, you know, to Mersa Matruh or whatever, it would kind of make sense to abstract all that away and have that handled a little differently. And then the other thing is the movement of reinforcements. The same sort of thing could be done with that. Because honestly, does it matter too much that I'm in this hex and not in this hex or something along that lines? So something like these movement boxes that wouldn't get it 100%. These don't get it 100% either, trust me. I've looked at them and I'm like, I don't really believe them, but I think you could fudge something like that that's just as unbelievable, right? But it's close enough. and would allow you to just get rid of a lot of the fucking effort that you have to put in consistently throughout it now. The one thing that I'm leaving out of this is the idea of bombing ports at a distance, like something like Tobruk could be bombarded or whatever. You could still fiddle that in there if you needed to. I'm not doing it, so am I missing a key portion of the game by not attacking the ports? I don't think so. I think first of all, I think it's better to preserve my Air Force. But I'm also preserving the enemy Air Force, So, but in terms of my bombers and whatnot, I don't think trying to reduce port capacity would do a hell of a lot towards slowing down the supplies. Maybe if I can get all the way out to Benghazi and knock that down from a 1+2 to a 2 token, because if that goes down to 2 tokens, that would really restrict how much is coming in from Tripoli. I don't feel like I'm in range to be able to do that. I don't want to count it and see, but I just don't think I am. I think the ranges of these planes, I think the biggest is like 200 hexes, and I don't think I'm in that range. Anyway, I just wanted to catch some thoughts, because while I'm not playing right now, I'm able, I'm still looking into it for whatever reason tonight. I don't know. Okay, so here we are in September, and I fitted out the British forces. The 13th Army Corps is going to come back in and replace the WDF, the destroyed WDF, which has not yet been rebuilt, but so I get a better command center eventually. On the Axis side, some more forces coming in over here, down to very few supplies. Luckily, September, things switch. Well, I don't know if it's luckily or not, but I was draining the Tripoli supply pool, but now it's going to start getting bigger shipping, but actually the same shipping, but it's going to have less coastal shipping, so I'm going to be able to deliver less of the materials, so that'll start piling up again. I mean, I would much rather obviously have both bonused. July was particularly ugly, but yeah, interesting. May was the big expenditure. Why is so much out of here? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I may have fucked up, and not just now, but at some other point, I may have fucked up and depleted that far more than it should be. I don't know. Some more German coastal artillery forming here. We had a couple of replacements, and I complain about both of them. One of them, like last time, remember, I don't know, some unit back here. Let's see what we got here. A motorcycle battalion with the 15th Panzer switched over to a 5th Legion. Well, now they pay for that by having to give up a machine gun battalion over to the 15th Panzer. Now, this wouldn't be that big a deal if they were near each other, as they were historically, but with them sitting on the very ends of a fairly long line, it is a real irritation to have units being swapped in and out in this sort of fashion. And again, there's like, a lot of the, hey, this historically happened, so let's do this, without giving any of the rationale behind why it happened and everything. And the specifics of how this game operates in terms of a number of things, but making these divisional fuel trucks or supply truck, organic supply trucks worthwhile is probably the biggest thing that's hurt by this, because the game does kind of, well, maybe not for the Germans, was going to say, the game does relax the divisional integrity for supply sources. Now, none of that is a big deal right now because everybody's pulling out of the DAK headquarters. But presumably, these guys might be trying to cut the river further south, and then they'll be operating off this Italian headquarters, and that won't work. Fuck. Of course, if I move the DAK to where the Italian headquarters is, or somewhere in between, it can handle the whole front. The problem is the DAK is pulling off that major supply head that I've been using, even though I've been pushing supplies further south. So that's one replacement. The other replacement that showed up was a BF 109E was replaced with a BF 109F. What's the difference? 3 movement points in terms of range. You know, again, we're talking such a picayune change. It feels like I'm going through all these contortions. The other thing, there were a couple of things I wanted to talk about before I get to playing. The other thing I wanted to talk about, the abstract map, this is something like what I was thinking of, but instead of just covering, replacing one map, it would be a longer sheet, maybe laid end to end, which had something kind of similar to this for the whole map, maybe with specific city boxes and whatnot, that would allow you to keep track of more or less where stuff is, just in case, and most of that stuff is just going to be transiting the board, but it's sort of a just in case the enemy attacks, you'd be able to place it there. But for the most part, that would be the more extreme version of it, where like you wouldn't actually need 5 maps on the table at once. You could kind of do it with 1 or 2 maps at a time, with everything else represented on that abstraction. But another option that I think is better is keep the whole map, keep the specific unit deployment locations and whatnot, but use a transit map as sort of a mirror copy that allows you to handle the areas where there's nothing going on for just reinforcing units and for trucking. And again, you'd cut down some of the, you'd reduce the number of trucks, et cetera, that are in the game because they'd be abstracted into that. Or maybe you would need trucks to make that work, right? Like you'd have to assign trucks to it. Anyway, it would be much more complex than just, all I need is this, little overlay type, or this little spare map that allows me to work on things. It would require some actual rules to do stuff. The final thing I wanted to talk about is we're in a situation that I think is a long-term stalemate. I'm going to play it out, but I don't know how valuable it is for you guys to see me play it out. Now, I like to chatter and talk, and I don't mind coming in and just saying, yep, nothing's happening, nothing's happening, nothing's happening. And maybe those of you who are left are so used to that by now, you don't really care. But I'm kind of I'm kind of thinking that it maybe makes more sense for me to video less. The problem with that, of course, is I kind of like to tell you, some of it's just me talking and talking about the day and whatnot. Speaking of which, did I mention it's Thursday? And I don't think I did. And time is just passing. Like, it just flies by so fast now. Not sure why. I think the combination of being alone, not having the daily connections at work and everything, there are times, like if I'm not doing something to keep my mind busy, and that's kind of the thing. Like if I'm not playing a video game, and raid counts for this, I start to feel an old feeling that I used to have when I wasn't working and didn't have any structure or anything to my life, which was this kind of, oh God, what do I do with myself? And it's not like a matter of I would clean the house or anything like that, more likely. Although that might, so raid is very demanding, more demanding than work was in terms of total time that I put in. But I didn't tend to do useful things. The kind of thing that I do is, well, all right, I can't play raid for a while, and I don't really have anything I want to do. The best choice would be I would be able to read, right? But it's still a little chilly out here. I'm having a hard time making my way out here to read, and it's harder in my bedroom. Watching videos is very easy to reach for. Just while I'm sitting at the computer, I just click on a video or whatever. So even when I'm not playing raid, I'm kind of doing that, and also kind of thinking, wow, I really should be doing something else at the same time or whatever. And then other options like going for a walk or something like that. Hey, it's just not going to happen. I know me. We had me trying to do this earlier when I was playing stuff down in the basement. Unfortunately, I have Gloomhaven still set up. I've moved it to the table in my attempt to play it, and yeah, the idea of cleaning it up, it looks like a big deal to clean up, right? To put things away and to try to remove stickers and all that, because the stickers are supposedly removable, but I'm not quite sure how to position them, how to get them back on the sticker sheets and whatnot. And it looks like a really big problem in a way that most board games are not a big problem. Like DAK, I know how I'm going to clean it up. It's going to go back in the baggies and whatnot. I had Gloomhaven all sort of punched and sorted at one point, and it's still sorted. I don't know, I don't think it ever made it back in the box. I feel like as I took things apart and set things up for play, that was over a long period. And so because it's got a lot of weird stuff going on in it, and cards that don't belong in certain decks that I have to kind of undo what I've done and stuff like that. It just looks like a big task. Anyway, so yeah, I kind of have this question in my head of whether or not I'm going to be continuing to give every turn updates or whatever. Maybe it makes more sense for me to come in less frequently, and then the videos might become less frequent as well as months become, I don't know, I think no matter what, a month is going to be like a half-hour video at least. So I can probably justify posting those. Weather clears. Commonwealth gets the initiative. They're going to force the Italian or the Axis to go first. That means the artillery is going to go. I'll let you know if anything exciting happens. Help but find problems with this game, but remember when I told you there's a conjunction of trucks that sort of tends to happen? Right now I've got one of them. I've got two full SP points of trucks and a bunch of one token trucks, 5 of them in the same hex. And they are now completely in alignment together unless I choose to break them up. Unfortunately, the counter mix does not give me any 3-point trucks. I see these 3 token trucks here. I can use one of them. They're not great though, right? Like the 1 token trucks have a full and an unfull side. The 3 token trucks do not. They're have a 2 token truck on the other side. For the 2 token truck on the other side, I have to use as many counters to represent the supplies that are moving as I do for the single token trucks. What I'd really like is a 3-4 truck or something. Sure, it's hard for the axis to get that together, but given the way that I'm driving my supplies right now, it happens. And I don't have anything. And the Commonwealth is exactly the same. It's like, I don't know what you're expected to do with your vehicles, but most of what you do in this game is haul them from a single point to another single point. That's going to be your main dump. And I chose to make this my main dump for now. Probably not a great idea, but if I do want to stretch down, I'm going to need to do that. And that may mean pulling the Italian headquarters out and bringing the DAK headquarters down, which is a couple of fuel there. But anyway, what it ends up is, yeah, your trucks end up all kind of converging and getting to this like single location if you're doing that. Anyway, shipped everybody over. I have not done my other shipping yet. As I finish up the turn, first of all, there's just a tendency to like, at least in my mindset, to not start an offensive, right? I mean, especially in this kind of position where I've set up defenses everywhere to hold the enemy back. At this point, pulling forth enough forces for the offensive without weakening the defensive lines feels so iffy, right? That's the first side of it. The artillery did nothing. Brits got a unit from the far east. But yeah, I mean, largely, maybe it's my fault type of thing. But there is a tendency for my games to bog down into defensive lines just because I am really reluctant to make aggressive moves. Watching this, I was playing a video game and I got myself in a really horrible position because I didn't know what I was doing and just like was unable to kill anything. You know, I basically had to rest after every kill or whatever. I selected bad stuff to begin with, whatever. I restarted that and I was having a really good time. Like I made all the ground that like I had covered already in like an hour or something. But then I had a power outage, very, very brief, just a flicker of power. But it was enough to kill my game. It didn't cut the computer off completely, which I don't quite understand. Like somehow the little power surge killed the game that I was running, but that's it. But anyway, that broke me away from the thing I'm doing to avoid playing this. And I'm finding myself with the same kind of avoidance that I had, say, with Vietnam, where I felt like nothing was really happening. I was moving a lot of pieces and doing a lot of stuff, but not really playing the game. Now, I'm nowhere near as bad a position as I was in Vietnam in terms of like just feeling like I'm just doing all this shit and nothing's happening, even though it's more the case here probably. I don't know. Anyway, what did I want to get to? Oh yeah, well, having gotten thrown off because of the power outage, and I mean, we're talking like, you know, maybe a fraction of a second, like I mean, definitely a fraction of a second, but very, very tiny. All right, I guess I'll push another turn in here instead then. I was having a really good time though, and completely avoiding this, but I can do that later tonight. Yeah, later tonight I'm going to be playing Raid, but I've got a lot to do there. It's having weather, but what we did have is Hitler had a bad dream about shipping, and he's not allowing any troops to be shipped this turn. Well, that's no big deal. I was clever enough to have shipped them all already. No biggie there. Axis got the initiative this time. They're going to force the Brits to go first. That precludes any of the bombardment bullshit, which wasn't doing anything anyway. Infantry brigade I got from the Far East, it just had to go back out there. I mean, I don't mind this because it's the random table, as opposed to like if there was anything in the historical that was this ridiculous. But yeah, it's just really like, I gotta send, I gotta send shit. Like they're just wasting shipping in port as far as I'm concerned. But you can see it happening. The troops were dispatched back to Egypt because, yeah, we can free them up. But then a need showed up, and it's like, yeah, about those troops, we want them back. About the Duke of York marched up the hill and then marched them back down again. I don't know. All right, anyway. I will continue with my Brits. So I kind of figured out where all my supplies went. It's really expensive to move stuff out of Tripoli. Like the troops that are moving out of there, I've been throwing a regular flow through there. Now, one token supply or whatever, one supply per unit, fuels you for the entire trip across, which is good. And then the outcome, which is not, it doesn't seem like there'd be much, but there's a lot of troops. So I'm like eating up a lot of fuel just dispatching everything. As I begin to realize, look, if I'm going to make an attack, I want to make it soon before the Brits start collecting up troops. Looks like they're not going to get many this turn, this month, but let's get some of the lead out, basically. So I've fueled up a couple of units. I'm not fueling foot units, like motorizing them or anything like that. That doesn't feel like a good choice because they'll get there eventually for free. So what I'm doing is I'm spending resources to move the stuff that's got to be motorized anyway. Not just armor, there's actually like some other stuff that is always motorized movement, some of the anti-tank equipment and stuff like that. But that has offensive capabilities. So I'm like, yeah, let's just spend some of the resources. We've got a fair amount of supplies in the background, and troops are becoming a bigger deal. I might consider flinging some good troop units forward as well. I haven't done that yet. What we got here? We got things like these Pioneers here, which are quality. We've got, well, not this. It's too small. These motorcycle troops, I guess they are. I don't think they're motorcycle. They're like bicycle or something. I don't know what the hell they are, because anyway, I'm sending a bunch of stuff forward, some armor as well, just because, look, and I actually positioned somebody down here, part of the Ariete division, and we're going to see if we can punch against Helwan. I kind of feel like whoever makes the first move in this is going to fail and be in worse situation due to it, but I don't know. Anyway, that's what we're doing. I still got to play with my trucks and my shipping and all that, but I want to give you an idea that, I'm not settling for, I'm just going to stalemate on the river with both sides for a very long time. I'm going to make an actual attempt. So we get a rainstorm hitting maps 3 and 4, C and D here. that becomes harder to move, that's all. And the air units are disabled. It's not going to affect anything over here, obviously. This map's affected, but the artillery barrages can still continue through the rain. And the Brits got initiative, so they're going to force the Axis to go first. So they get their artillery or whatever. Actually, I don't think they want to do that. I think they want to go first, again. A double turn is exactly what the Axis wanted here to cross the river. I put any kind of garrison here, anything at all, and the Axis can't cross there, and they're blocked. And then the movement comes down to here, which becomes a lot harder. I have to bring DAK down as the headquarters if I'm going to push there. And again, that can be blocked too. It is completely possible that both sides will garrison the river completely. That same damn brigade is coming back from the Far East. This is getting ridiculous. This thing is like schlepping between... Well, I'm in supply off Suez, am I not? Not quite. Pretty close, but yeah, not quite. If I had a headquarters, I would be. Okay. Yeah, that same damn brigade has come back again. This is getting just stupid. It's like, I think the boat's lost at sea or something, to tell you the truth. So the Brits cover that with this, I don't know what that is, armored cars, something like that, armored cars. But here's the problem. This I don't have covered. Now I could have driven down to there, but that's not in supply. And I would have to go through a lot of work to maintain a supply source down there. Do I think the Axis can cut it right away? I don't think so. I don't think they have the movement allowance to get themselves across the board over here. If they do, I might be kind of fucked. They might be able to launch an attack there. But again, it's going to be really hard. They don't have the supply circumstances right now, do they? Six. They do. They can get down there. So, if they've got anything mobile enough and they're determined enough, we could end up seeing a fight down here in the south. I've chosen with the Allies not to defend that. Bottling that up, I can do it, but it's going to cost me a continuous flow of supply for eating off the map type materials, because I don't have a major road or a railway or anything like that heading down that way, whereas the Axis has the primary road that they'll be able to control if they control that side of the river. Is this stupid? Yeah, I think so. I think I should cover it. All right, fuck me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's no zone of control across there, but even if there is, I cover that with this beforehand and move down. Now I've got to get some trucking down here to get supplies, maybe to here, which is not going to be pleasant, but as long as I keep a source of supply there, this game is blocked off. If I'm in position down here, I can launch an attack through here, so the Axis has to cover that as well. And then I honestly think we may be done. I'm gonna finish up this turn and then consider whether or not we're gonna just pack it in here, because yeah, you know, the concept of, yeah, we could make a crossing was a decent one, but you know, these could have been covered a long time ago, to be honest. And I don't feel like the Brits have, they gave up a good brigade here, but I don't feel like the Brits have given up have had enough troops stripped off of anywhere that the Axis can afford to make an attack across the river. There is still the possibility of attacks on on Alexandria itself, which isn't across the river. Maybe. Let's look at the combat table there. It's not pretty. It's going to be very close to begin with, and all armor will be halved, and attacking mech will be halved. But otherwise, it's plausible that we could do an attritional fight for the streets of Alexandria itself. Do we want to try that? I don't know. Likewise, the Brits can come down through here. The only places, everything south of there is blocked by the river. And that's why we've got this sort of siege situation. I feel like the Axis had decided, look, especially with 15th Panzer there, yeah, this is not something I want to attack, but I've got my best defensive units in place. I've got my best units in place for defending that. The question then becomes, will the Brits be able to attrit that in any reasonable fashion? Right now, they just don't have the troops. Although they have the resources, they could, try to bleed things, and they get replacements more quickly, and certainly don't have to wait for them to travel as far when they do get them. But I just don't feel like this is going to be a viable attack. I think I'm going to lose more forces than I cause in losses. I'm guessing about 2-to-1 in losses, maybe worse than that. And eventually maybe I can afford that. Right now I can't. Right now that would start meaning stripping stuff off of the river line to the extent that, maybe I'm not defending it well enough, and maybe the Axis can concentrate forces and hit me without, I can't leave stuff like a single unit to defend where the bridges are. That's what comes down to it. Can I blow bridges, though? Oh, I think there are rules for that. Might be an option. Haven't been doing it. Might be an option. All right. Enough, I can't find any rules for it. I think it's probably factored in, in the idea that, look, the bridge will be mined or whatever, but there's enough infrastructure remaining there that some sort of attack can be made across it. I don't know. It seems odd, but I cannot find anything about bridge destruction. I looked under engineering rules. They have rules for bridging the river. That will not help here because the Nile is prohibited. So there's not going to be any easy bridging. That feels a little weird to me, and I don't recall anything in the specific rules for this game dealing certainly with blowing bridges, nor with any kind of bridging of the rivers that's beyond the normal series rules. I don't know how I feel about that. It feels like a river line should be, like a World War II army should be able to cross a river to some extent. But also that whatever functionality the bridges provide, that should be destroyable. At least interdictable to the extent that the best you can do is normal bridging type rolls with it. But I don't see anything at all. I think the idea, I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know why the series doesn't have bridge destruction in it. It feels like that's a pretty fucking key element. That's turn and it's raid time. The Axis had to kind of scramble to cover and block everything off. Now I got to do some big thinking in terms of, is it worth continuing? Look, at some point or another, the Commonwealth, U.S. forces, whatever that show up, are going to break this line, right? If the Axis isn't going to make an attempt, though, to try to cut through there, I think I give up. I think it's not worth it, because it's gonna, like, I wish I had, I don't think there's any historical details in here, but let's see what we have other scenarios, right? And those other scenarios might help us. So El Alamein, the first battle, is in 42. Alam Haffa campaign is 29th of August, 42. That's where the line really is breaking. I'd have to make it through here. About as much as I've played. I gotta pour my tea, hold on. In order to get the historical Allied attempt to break the line, you know, a successful breaking of the line, I basically have to play that much just wearing things along. So I have to do some serious thinking. If I think that the Axis think it's worth a shot to try to break through in Cairo or along the river line where they have bridges, I'll keep playing. But if I don't think that's the case, I feel like if anything, the Commonwealth's going to have a harder time cracking this line than they did at El Alamein, Al Haifa. Because it's just, the terrain is just significantly better. We're still in breastworks, etc. So here we're talking about a slope, right? That's what gets us the advantage, a slope with the hedgehog. Well, a slope with the hedgehog, we've got the hedgehog no matter what. Not a slope, hills, low hills. That gives close terrain with normal multipliers, so armor isn't going to be particularly effective there. But it's also not particularly ineffective. Crossing the river, the major river, not the Nile, because the Nile's illegal, gives the attacker a huge multiplier against them. Now, the terrain will be open, so strangely enough, the armor will have some advantages crossing across there. Of course, some of that gets counteracted because I have counter armor wherever it's applicable, I think. For the Axis, the job's harder because they're going to be fighting their way into a swamp, which is very close terrain, with nasty multipliers for anything other than foot soldiers. And, well, no. It's going to be very close terrain because they're going to take the river modifier. You get to choose one multiplier, and that's it. They're not additive. So yeah, I don't have to deal with the fact that I'm in the swamp for that, but it is very close terrain. It is hedgehogged. And there's absolutely no way of, it's frontal assaults, right? In every single case, it's got a 1 hex frontage to make the attacks across the bridge or here, this little causeway. It's kind of interesting. I just don't feel like the Commonwealth has its forces that depleted that the Axis is going to be willing to make an attack. Because the situation is far more defensible than El Alamein is. And the situation is in both directions, right? So what the hell do you do? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like, the total collapse of the Commonwealth has brought us to this situation. And if I do call it it's certainly an Axis victory. They did significantly better than historically. Of course, there were things against them. They cheated against them. There's no question there. All right. I'll give this some thinking and probably come to a decision. Maybe not tomorrow, but probably pretty soon. Here it is Friday, and I don't want to make the decision today. There's a couple of things. One, I got to go dancing tonight, and I haven't put enough thought in. I'm not sure I want to play another turn, though. And my back and actually my hip are really hurting right now. Like, mainly my hip. My back hurts when I sleep on it, but my hip's hurting for other reasons. When you hurt one thing, other things start getting unhappy about it. So, like, if your knee goes, your other knee goes, But, yeah. And so I'm going to hold off doing anything today. There's a lot of advantages to me to playing a lot of rain today. And then I got to go dancing. So, yeah, kind of have to do these things and assuming, I don't know. Like, I try to convince myself I don't want to go dancing because, hey, I'm too injured, The reality is I'm too lazy, and it's kind of a rainy day, and it's going to rain for the next couple days. I'm out of food, but that was an oops. Or I'm low. I'm low on bread, which is bad. Like, out of the bread that I use the most, I get 3 different kinds of bread for different kinds of sandwiches. But yeah, I don't want to. Right now, my gut instinct would be to call it off, but I don't feel like I should make that in this point, and I might actually play the rest of the month or something to see what's going. Really, though, it comes down to, is there anywhere, and this is probably the best choice, where the Axis can launch an attack. Otherwise, we have a long wait. And like I said, the war didn't turn until somewhere around here. So, or in this area, in this theater. So I'm not expecting the Commonwealth to be able to launch anything. But this is kind of historical. There was a long period of stalemate in this theater. And I don't know when it started. Again, there's not a good history here. I'll look it up at some point. I probably should have done it. I gotta cut the video. Obviously, my impression of this whole situation is really skewed. I thought, I knew Tobruk held the Axis up, but I also knew they bypassed it, this road here, right? 1st of October, 41. There'd be no reason to improve that, to continue improving that, if Tobruk had fallen before that. So Tobruk shouldn't have even fallen yet. The Battle of Gazala, I just looked this up. I don't know where Gazala is. But it's in Wiki. It's telling me it's in eastern Libya. Well, the Libyan border is this. So it may not be marked on here. I would be surprised if it wasn't. But that's leading me to believe that Bardia and whatnot had not yet fallen. That doesn't happen until June of 42. So we've got This is the equivalent of the siege of Tobruk in terms of time period, I guess. Wow. Now I gotta go look that up. The impression that I've always gotten out of, again, I stopped reading a lot of World War II type history, especially the military stuff, when I was around 12 or so. It sort of lost my interest in my early days of wargaming. And I've never been really good at understanding the campaigns. So this is kind of intriguing because the impression that I have gotten was that, yeah, Tobruk was a nasty fight, but that the Axis managed to push relatively far past it. And if Wiki's right, and Ghazala is in Libya, that would mean that, the fight was stuck here for some time. Which, it's like, okay, so you're sieging Tobruk. Is it really that big a deal, if you can't get through by it? And it makes sense too, because, because roads can give you trace supply. So yeah, I mean the Axis, if they can siege Tobruk, they can go wherever the hell they like. Doing a little bit more wiki research here. So Tobruk ended fairly soon, November of 41. It ran from April to November, which means that the Axis was essentially in this region, but not pushing forward. And let me look a little further. And try some more, but I'm astounded by the situation, because it always feels to me in the games that I play that it's really hard. Like, sure, you can detach a force to siege Tobruk or whatever, but it's really hard for the Allies to hold up against an Axis advance. And the question is, how much further from that siege, can you relate your forces? It really seems odd to me that it took from here to here for the Axis to be able to actually push out of Libya. That just astounds me. I mean, we look at the troops that are available, and the Commonwealth could not hold the line here or here, right? Sure, it's against everything, but you get past that November, and you've got everything that was at Tobruk. You get into December, January, whatever. You've got everything that was in Tobruk coming against the Commonwealth again. Plus, they would have lost troops trying to support Tobruk. I'm left, but no matter what, there are long stalemates in this campaign, and this may just be one of them. It just seems like it's going to be an overly long one if I run to here. That's the difference. This particular OCS game covers a lot of the downtime. And I've got to keep that in mind. Like, I think the East Front ones are largely designed not to be the whole, they're designed to be like a single operation within the war. And so, it's not like you're not running the theater through the entire list of things. And that's part of the reason why you have the substitutions and the replacements and all that. It's so fucking long that significant changes were incorporated, and they wanted to keep that historical alignment. I don't like how it works, I don't like the choices that were made in a lot of ways. You know, like changing a unit's designation means you have to replace the counter. That feels very, like, that feels like that's a decision that should be made at the theater commander's level. The game is designed for shorter campaigns. The OCS is designed for shorter campaigns. And there are shorter scenarios in DAK. And maybe they're better. Maybe they just are better. But I'm always wanting to play the biggest thing that I can in any given game, regardless of how ignorant I am of the history. It was relatively late on Sunday, like about raid time, and I haven't gotten any gaming in. I'm not giving up yet. It's just this weekend has been particularly rough for me in terms of like mental state. Not only my back hurting, but and such minor things throw me into these loops. But I have a towel rack in the bathroom that, like, and not because of my back, but that I ended up accidentally tearing some of the concrete screws or whatever, the heavy screws that held it in place out of the wall and doing some damage. And it's all stuff I can fix, but I don't have the will ever. I know that now. Like, I just have lost all will for everything. And so, like, when absolutely no, oh, and also I had a dead bird out here. And when anything goes wrong that is irreparable or difficult, that I deem as irrecoverable in my current state, it throws me into a real funk. So I've just been playing computer games and whatnot and sleeping and falling into pretty bad depression. I need to get more food. I don't know what's going on. No, I just learned that Dean Essig, the designer of this game and the series, just died. And a sad moment for wargaming in general. All these stickers have, all the stickiness seems to have left very quickly. I think I don't have the heat on in here, and I think the temperature got to a certain point and something changed. But anyway, I get distracted so easily. But yeah, it's definitely a sad loss, and well, at least he left us with a lot of games to enjoy. We're all getting to a certain age, although he certainly ended up going quite a bit younger than one would have expected. It is Tuesday, pretty part of the day. It didn't start out pretty, and I didn't get enough sleep or anything. It's not going to be nice for the rest of the week. I'm kind of fucked because I was too tired to go shopping. And I don't know, with my back and everything, I'm always iffy about the idea, even though it has healed my back to pull the cart. I'm going to try to play a little bit more, but mainly I'm doing raids still. I'm in a clan versus clan thing, I know. I've been able to play through those a little bit more rapidly at other times, but I've just really sunk into a pretty bad state this weekend. Every weekend's tough on me. Like, I just want to die for like 2 days after dancing. Saturday doesn't usually feel as bad. That's when I sleep more because I had too much and spent too much energy. But Sundays are really horrible. I'm kind of like almost always very, very depressive. And then sort of the week builds up and I recover. Like, Part of it being maybe the idea that I'll be going dancing again, because I remember being pretty much in the doldrums during the period of the pandemic where I could not go at all, which was quite a few. It was like about a year that was mostly cut off. I'm going to give it a shot, but I'm also playing Raid in the background, so it's going to get kind of disturbing there. But I'm on the attitude of, look, I know what the timeline's supposed to be. This is a game that's got long pauses. Just fucking deal with it. I think I got through the turn. It was not easy. Raid demands more attention than I'm giving it. This game demands more attention than I'm giving it. And this is why I bailed away from doing this before, where I'd have Raid playing in the background and come in. The turns, I have to walk away every 2 minutes, basically, and I'm not able to do that. And so instead, I waste like 15 runs time-wise that I could be doing in Raid, and I have to do that right now. So I got this turn done. There was nothing too exciting, no withdrawals, I checked. We did get additional manpower in Alexandria, but I'm not using it. I'm holding it up because I've got some damaged units now. I probably shouldn't hold it up. Oh, this guy didn't move. He should go do something. I'll figure him out. For the Axis, things are a little bit more complicated. I decided to reposition some of my artillery. Some of it has low range, only 2 range. That's not particularly helpful to me here. It would be more helpful back here. I may shift some 3 range stuff down there, although I have a fair amount of artillery covering the 2 crossings here. Here's the problem. And this is what I faced before. And I'm facing, so I'm kind of committed to making the attack, right? Ideally, I would have just done it this turn, because I think I just should. Because I look at the forces that are heading up, and look, I've got the river line covered at this point, basically. What is in transit, I've got this is like one of the best units that I can motorize, that I would have to motorize to get forward, and I'm just like, yeah, it's hard to justify. Other stuff, well, obviously these guys got left behind, but I found another one, a light tank, that I think I had been moving. Maybe that was abandoned by this side of the road, and I just ended up landing on it with some units. But so much of what I would be bringing forward is just such crap. Over here, I am committing this Ariete unit. I've got a couple of units here, but these are infantry. They're going to move very, very slowly. These are actual foot infantry, so they're going to move faster because they don't have to push their trucks. And, honestly, I just don't think what's coming is going to make that big a difference. I mean, it might make a difference in terms of a reserve to put in. It's hard to tell. I don't really want to spend the fuel because I'm actually running out of resources even back in Tripoli, although Benghazi is relatively rich right now. For some reason, and I don't understand why, and I think it's the units that are filtering down, I'm just not collecting up there. So I got three full SPs this turn. 1 talent went for this armored unit, and the other, the fuck is this? I don't know. I'm going to bring it in for some reason. I don't really need it. But I don't know where some Matrua is full. I mean, I might as well throw it forward somewhere. It cost me to rebase it, but it's a reinforcement. It should have been on the map last turn, actually. Actually, probably back on turn 1. I'll bring it in at Mercer True. I have some damaged units that I ought to get out of there and do a refueling, which is cheap enough. But anyway, I just don't think that the reserves that I'm pulling up are going to make a damn bit of difference. One thing that might is the headquarters. So I might move that headquarters. I don't know where he got to. I've got I know I lost one Italian headquarters. I thought I was sending another one to replace it. It's not this. There's got to be an extra headquarters kicking around somewhere that went on its way. And I just don't know where the fuck it is. Where it's hiding. It's hard when you walk away for a little bit. It might be this thing, although I kind of view that as a valuable location to have one. Is this a valuable location? Well, it traces back, I think, all the way to Mercer Matrua. So, yeah, that's kind of useful. So I really wanted to move DAK down because it would put these guys like into combat command and stuff like that. I could, of course, truck resources down there. But there's no possibility of an attack across here. So yeah, I'm fine. So really the question comes down to, do I want to batter across the river? And that's the question I had before. And I got to make that decision pretty damn soon. Because if I'm not going to do it, if I'm just not going to do it, there's no opportunity for an outflank anymore on either side. The only thing there is batter across the river. Now, I could get lucky. But the stacks I'm facing are relatively big. They're not things that I can just, brush aside or anything. So it's really hard to see anything other than a purely attritional war getting me through there. And I don't think that's going to work. Which then means, okay, is there a point at which the Commonwealth can win that attritional war and fight their way through? I don't know. I'm going to have to think about this. Maybe it's best just to put the Axis win in the bank and say, sure, there were stalemate lines, but nothing like the Nile River. Nothing like that was standing in the way. And, we've kind of countered each other all along. There's nothing that's going to force the enemy to retreat ever, right? Like, I can make them take losses, but I will probably take loss. See, that's the whole thing. Like, the combat system's so hard to predict that it's like, it's possible I could get a couple of lucky shots in with a turn flip and maybe breach the river. Maybe. Is it worth expending my army to do that, is what it comes down to. I'll keep thinking. This is not the time to make that decision, which is why I didn't attack this turn. Well, that and I don't have the time to push the extra, 10 minutes or whatever per attack. It doesn't take that long, but it probably would today just because I'm unused to playing. It is Wednesday. I've expended most of my resources in raid that I'm willing to do so. And it's just rain. Rainy day. It's going to be rainy until, I don't know, Saturday or so. Maybe Friday. I don't know. But Fridays don't count. Saturdays don't count. But it is supposed to be sunny into next week. I've before been in positions where, I'm low on the food that is, I'm basically out of the food that is easy to eat. So, I got things like oatmeal eggs and stuff like that. The biggie is that I'm running really, really short on bread. I got to be careful about that because I kind of live off bread. But, and, you know, the damage in my bathroom, it's just added to sort of the pile of things that, you know, like this tarp here that I used to have kind of a quarter there. There's another tarp on the other side over there on that door. There's something underneath the deck. All these things need to be fixed, replaced, whatever. Well, they can't be fixed. Replaced, or something else has to be chosen about them, and I just can't. And honestly, I think a lot of people are in that kind of position, and you know, the towel thing is on that level now. It's just a broken thing that I'm kind of more accepting of. It's like when something initially goes really wrong, it doesn't even have to be a terrible thing, but when something initially goes wrong, even an injury or something like that that lasts forever, your first reaction is very, very negative, or at least mine is. And then you kind of accept it, right? And I think most people don't accept these little problems, right? The little problems, they're like, well, that fucking sucks. It may make them miserable for a moment or a day or whatever. But then they go about fixing them. They do something about it. And my nature is to just learn to accept that life is a little worse. And so it's no shock. Every bad thing that happens is just life has gotten a little worse, right? No matter how small it is. And it never gets better anymore, right? Like, there was a time in my life when things got better. And now I know they won't. I know at best I can get is, yeah, I can live with that, you know, eventually. Speaking of which, in the game, yeah, I'm going to make my decision on attacking this turn. I'll go through the random stuff and I'll come back. But, you know, a big part of me just wants to go to sleep and say screw it and fuck around all night again. I mean, most of the last couple of days I've been playing Raid pretty nonstop, but I find other things to do at the same time. Before that, I was playing this stupid, you know, RPG, very old school type thing. Problem was, until I don't know when it was, Thursday night, I think, that I broke the thing in my wall, and that sort of sent me into a tailspin. Before that, I was kind of excited about getting to the next game. I really want to do the next game. But now I know that, like, the best I can do right now, like if I clean this up or just stop or whatever, it's to just numb myself to existence, right? So the best I can do is to play this, which I think means I have to make an attempt. So the sort of start of the turn shit, no weather, there's an event, a massive shipping raid, which means the Axis gets no shipping, and I think that just means, because it's Malta based, no shipping to Tripoli. I don't think it affects the coastal. Again, that's just how I've been calling it. So, bold number is cross-med shipping allowance. I don't know, because this says C is coastal shipping. They both say shipping, whereas this event, no Axis shipping capacity for this turn. That may be none from anywhere. I think I'll do it that way. Last time I didn't read it that way, and I've been reading shipping to mean only this stuff going into Tripoli. It makes sense either way, but by reading that chart, it uses the word shipping in both and then has a qualifier. Brits got a withdrawal to the Mideast, but the Mideast is full, so nothing more goes there. It's full and isn't coming back, right? I think that was what we determined. That there's no line for the Mideast to come back. Yeah. Once it goes there, it's in hell. Which is kind of fucked up because what did I send there? I sent the 4th Indians truck, and I've got brigades from other units there. I assumed I was getting them back. I assumed it didn't really matter what I sent. Turns out it does. Oops. Axis got initiative, so the Brits are going to have to go first. And it looks like you got a marker there that may mean we're switching. I don't think so. I wonder what that is. Let's see. Between 12 and 19 in September. That'll be, oh, that's a railroad company, okay. Not gonna make a damn bit of difference unless I make a lot of ground. Now, this is the whole thing. The Siege of Tobruk allows the Commonwealth to build some of this railway, given that they were holding so far forward. I didn't think they were. I did not think, I didn't think they were up there. But this is what happens when you lose sight of the history. You know, I mean, once upon a time, I understood this theater a lot better. Now, I think the only thing that I kind of really have any kind of real grasp of in terms of military stuff, I mean, yeah, is maybe Gettysburg. You know, most things have just drifted from my head, and you know, I have bits and pieces here and overall, ideas, but like about this campaign, they're probably badly flawed. So the Axis opens things up with a massive set of air raids, knocking out all the fighter planes and a fair amount of bombers. I'm not going to push my luck on the bombers. The chances are pretty good, especially when I'm using the 109s here, but like +4 on the table means I have to roll snake eyes or a 3 to have any chance of being damaged. But those will rack up if you just keep shooting bombers. And, screw it. If he's using, if he's not using his bombers, let's just let him keep them, But when I had committed a plane already and was going to have to refuel it, well, the hell with that. I'll just move it about that way. Now that I've done that, I have to make my thinks here as to where and how I want to cross the barriers. And I don't know the answer. I honestly just don't know the answer. First of all, I'm not allowed to paw through the enemy stacks. So all I have is an idea is kind of the top unit and how big they are. This, I'm assuming, is pretty damn strong. This looks strong. I don't know. This looks strong. This does too, but I kind of feel like maybe that's the place I want to launch from. Especially since I can get some commandos in there, whatever. Am I allowed to do an overrun? I think I need to have the actual movement points to do that. It's gonna make it so I couldn't say throw this unit in, right? Because it could come It's a commando, but it's a big one. You could come 1, 2, but it's not going to have the extra movement to make the attack an overrun. Are there advantages for an overrun? Not with an Italian force. What about pushing into here? Would this do me any good at all to like beat up on this commando and start to cross? It would allow me to put some at-J down in this direction because I can march along the river line and still be in supply. 1 hex is close enough for trace supply. Well, for either supply, but. And then I could start shifting forces across. I think the Brits did not do a very good job of defending this area. They went down and defended these, but they ignored those. That may be my best chance. Probably shouldn't have run all those bombers if I'm not going to actually launch my attacks now. Well, the fighters. The bombers suffer a risk no matter what from the flak. So it's like, probably don't want to commit them. I'm trying to get a grasp on what I can do to undermine this situation. I think this is my best move. I think the Brits fucked up by not covering those. A little fuzzy-tailed tree rat there. The problem is I don't have the troops to really exploit things or launch an attack against this very effectively. So I shifted my commandos into place there. They're not ready to, didn't have the movement points to cross. I'm guessing they fucking motorize. Yeah. Nor do I really have the strength points to make an attack. That unit has special rules, I think, pertaining to the Egyptians. They're able to convert them a little bit more easily. I have like a bonus on that. Which means I need to keep bringing troops forward. And that's the slow advance that I do. Of course, by putting units here, I'm telegraphing stuff. I don't, I don't see a way around that, though. But if the Brits have to draw units off to defend these areas, these crossings, that will weaken their position. So even telegraphing is worth something to me. I'm working my way through. I haven't gotten into the Cyrenaica area yet, but I've done the regular movement for everything else. And I'm sorry for how, slow and disjointed things feel. When I'm away for a while, it is much, much harder to get back into the game. And I wasn't away that long, right? I don't know if I played Friday, but I played Thursday. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, 5 days away. I was back yesterday, struggled with it. I don't know if that even counts. I'll call it 6 days. I don't know. But what it brings to mind is, let's say you're playing this in someone's basement or whatever, someplace where they can leave it set up and it's not going to impact their forever life the way I have in mine. And, you go over once a week or something and play 4 or 5 hours once a week or something like that. How hard it's going to be to come back and get it, right? We used to do Empires in Arms that way, where, we did a blitz game. That was kind of cool. But we used to do Empires in Arms, and I think WIF, where we would get together once, twice a week. And it was just really hard to pick the game up again. But I don't know. I don't know if this is particularly harder. I know I have an easier time with the strategic stuff than I do coming back with the operational. Probably because I'm less into operational than just about anything. Problem with coming back. And I don't know if this happens as much in an opposed play, but I really feel like, okay, I expended so much effort playing a turn. I gotta go away. Whereas, you know, when I was at my best in this, I was like, run through a turn, run through a turn. It wasn't a long turn. It turned out not to be a big turn at all because I aborted my attack choices. I looked at this and I'm like, yeah, I want to make this move first. I want to at least dislodge some allied forces. And if I don't dislodge allied forces immediately, then I can do a crossing. And, wait. I'm wondering if it makes sense for me to go here. The problem is I don't have a follow-up force. I have like this shit. I could strip some forces out of a place like here, but then that opens me up to being attacked, perhaps. Just looking across the board. Of course, one of the other things is because I can't paw through the enemy's units, I kind of don't spend a lot of time balancing my own stacks or anything like that in terms of strength points. So some of these could be wildly like weaker positions. And that happens sometimes. I don't know. But it also kind of annoys me. I feel like it should be more the die roll. Like if high command isn't aware that things are wildly disproportionate, I don't know. Anyway, I'm taking a break. I don't know what I'm doing. I had to do an update for RAID, and somehow it froze my computer, so I'm doing a hard reboot. And since I would just go to sleep, except that, like, I wouldn't have anything to listen to while I'm trying to sleep. So I grabbed a book I want to read and started that, but then I'm like, fuck it. It's taking too long not to read, but so I'm going to try another quick turn here. And this time the Brits get the initiative. Do they want to flip the turn? You know, the Axis didn't really do anything. They did counter a lot of my planes. I don't like that. I really don't like that. I'll be able to recycle them all, except for the dead ones, if I go first. But on the other hand, he's got such air superiority that maybe I just don't care. And I'll force him to go first. That way I get to use my reserve artillery against him. Am I worried about that crossing? Honestly, I don't think the Axis is crossing. They would have crossed last turn if they did. I'm going to say odd, I'm worried, and we'll go first. No. Okay, so I'm going to allow the Axis, or I'm going to force the Axis to go first. Father, I found my headquarters. It was hidden under this damn reserve marker. God damn it. I've been looking around thinking, I had another headquarters. Do I need to send this one from Tripoli? Yeah, I have it in place already. What's bugging me is my computer is like stuck in this kind of restart mode. And I don't know if it's doing updates, in which case it would be really bad if I did a restart on that, on top of the restart. That could cause real problems. But it may also be, I'm hoping to hell it's not dead. I have another computer, but then I'd have to go through a lot of effort to retrieve everything that's on mine. I've been I don't know, not really. I've been considering, I should switch computers, get all my important information over to my wife's computer, which is newer and better, but I just never want to do it. I'm hoping to be dead before my computer dies. You know, it's like every little bit of, you know, everything that breaks, everything that gets fucked up, I'm always hoping, yeah, but I might not last a month, man. Well, it turns out my computer was indeed updating. Yeah, that's pretty enough. I I could head out, but, and probably, I mean, you know, that's really threatening. I hate being in the rain on the way back, especially. If I'm not prepared, it means stuff gets wet, and that's not good because there's like cardboard boxes and stuff. If I'm prepared, it means I put a fucking tarp inside my basket, and it's just a pain in the ass to cope with. I didn't mind so much, I don't know, I didn't mind just stuffing the tarp in there, and my wife would do most of the unpacking. But nowadays, I'm like, without working, without having to schedule with her, I can just go whenever I want. Therefore, I can always put it off. But anyway, I'm left with some hard calls here that I'm having difficulty deciding on. So I've decided to cross the river. Screw it, you know, if the Brits aren't going to defend, I set up and off. I got my commandos there, and I've got good odds. I've got a good quality unit. I should be able to beat it up. However, there's the question of delivering ordnance. And I've got a few choices. I think I'm going to use planes, but it might make sense to actually not use planes. If I hadn't telegraphed by having to cross the river, I might just use artillery. Because artillery is more surprising. So here's the thing. I do my air barrage during my movement segment. I think I do that here, even though it risks the planes. I'm better at that. I'm better with that idea than blowing supplies, because supplies disappear so quickly when you use artillery. But then, the enemy reaction segment, if he doesn't use his artillery on me, I might well throw artillery in down when it comes to my combat segment and try to launch attacks, you know, if I get lucky or whatever, and burn some supply. Just, you know, try to make the push all at once on this turn. This is the most likely success. Anyway, onward. When the UPS truck comes, because it just sort of parks there, and you know, the mail lady does the same thing. And they take a long time, right? And I can't tell, is he getting a package that I'm going to be interested in? Am I going to watch him? You know, am I going to see him come up my walk or not? And, you know, if he does bring me something, they end up leaving it in kind of, I don't know, there's no good places here anymore. There used to be things that were covered. Like I said, I've let things go to pot. But it's possible that, like, I've got a delivery. I don't know of one, so it's highly unlikely. I don't know where he parks, though. Like, this is not where he usually parks when he's dealing with anyone else. So I'm kind of like having to watch now. Maybe he slipped out the other side or something. I haven't seen any motion. I've been not watching like a hawk, but watching vaguely. And I just haven't seen anybody come out or heard any noise. Oh, maybe he's having his lunch here. Boy, that would really fuck my state of stability up. Bombers succeeded, and we will move on and see what else happens. I did this out of turn. I rebased some planes down here to cover this. The Brits can't just throw their bombers in, and I think that pretty much prevents them. They got an artillery here with enough range to hit this. 1, 2, 3. I'll probably do that. But other than that, I'm not going to be able to do anything about these guys. If the bombers scramble over there, it's like I get, you know, interceptions, which I could have done anyway by hitting the planes, but they've taken some hits on their bombers. I don't think they want to risk them. They're one kind of decent fighter bomber here. I don't know what the fuck those are. Kaifers. Sounds like a derogatory term to me. And then over here, I don't think I have anything with good defense. Certainly not that can handle the 109 that I have over there. I've put a 109 in each of my air stacks, which really gives me a lot of good cover. Well, I heard some thumping around. He's leaving now. I don't know what the hell. I didn't see him go anywhere. He may have gone out the side and I just missed it. And here comes the mail truck, another such distraction. Anyway, I'm in the midst of doing the counter bombardments, and they've been successful so far. Not this one. So, if you played with the option that specifically forbids one player from doing it, but it ain't me. If you play with the option that allows you to fire artillery without a reserve marker, this particular game, because of the brigade artillery attachments, becomes completely different, okay? So as it stands under the standard rules, I have these limited little artillery batches. Well, I don't have to use supply, even here, I believe. I counted at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can trace back to Alexandria. So I don't know why this is built up. I really don't know why I built up that dump there. But anyway, I think I thought it was necessary for here, but there's no other bridges, and that one is actually secure. And this is just a risk. If the axis cuts across, it gives them some kind of advantage. I mean, their chances of doing so are pretty damn low. But anyway, all the artillery that I fired, you know, pretty puny shots that weren't very effective. But if instead I could dump in, you know, in this one, what is there? It would be another 10 points of artillery. It would double the artillery output that I had. It feels like a really big difference. The other thing is, I absolutely cannot use those brigade artillery for defensive fire under the current rule, under the standard rules. Whereas, because I can't afford to put a reaction, a reserve marker on those units, because they're kind of frontline units. They'd be halved on an overrun attack at the very least. And on a normal attack, well, I'd have to remove the reserve marker, but also, you know, I have a very limited number of them. I'm actually using all my reserve markers, which is shocking to me. And the axis is as well? That can't be. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I'm using all my reserve markers. I mean, I got one back here that's whatever. But anyway, it would definitely change the amount of artillery fire you'd be seeing every turn, which feels kind of funky. On the other hand, I've been fucking up because on every turn that, let me think about this. On every turn, I should be firing all the artillery that's not under a reserve marker. Huh. So I should be causing a little bit more attrition than I've been causing with the Commonwealth. All right, well, I'll try to remember that. You know, kind of internalizing all the meanings of the sequence of play and everything, and the various mechanisms in play, is really, really difficult. Really difficult for me. But anyway, I've fired my artillery, and now I have to, I think that's all I'm doing on reaction. Yeah, it's kind of weird. Your artillery switches purposes. So if you've got a reaction marker on it, or a reserve marker on it, you are not going to be able to use it on your own turn. Well, you can use it over in the exploitation phase. but you have to expend the reserve marker. So if you want that reserve marker on your artillery for defensive fire, you can't use it on your own turn. But there's no reason, if you don't have a reserve marker, that you don't just fire off your artillery during your own turn, which I have not been doing. So I should have been getting regular fire from those brigade guns that I have just not been taking. But it doesn't help in defense. It only helps on offense, unless there's a turn flip-flop. The turn flip-flops, like, it's really hard to get my head around all of this in a way that makes sense. Like, the turn flip-flops just seem like there's randomization. But then again, there's randomization in the combat tables, you know, right? So it's like, okay, what does it do? I don't know. The players have some control over it, but it doesn't feel like it's anything in particular. I can't put my thumb on exactly what it is. So it's like, you know, changing the cycle of command, the radius, essentially the turn radius for your command. I can't remember what the term is for that. But the ability to make decisions more quickly. But it doesn't really matter if I'm not using my artillery. Which you normally wouldn't, to be fair. You normally wouldn't be, like, if I had all this extra, you know, if I had all this artillery to fire, I normally wouldn't use it just on the hopes of getting some attrition attacks. But I have unlimited supplies in Alexandria, which is crazy. Crazy for OCS. Now I have to decide where I'm going to attack. I'm certainly going to launch an attack here. Certainly not going to launch an attack where I have disordered units, but where I don't have disordered units, I may want to drop some artillery. It's so, you know, it's like, okay, look, you know, 3 quality units crossing a river. Come on, man, that's just idiotic. Probably the same here. Now, the Axis also conducted some artillery fire. I fired here to no effect, but I fired here, and that was an expensive shot. Took 2 full supply points to fire off, which is kind of crazy, especially since, even though I've disordered them, caused a step loss, running, I don't know, I think on this table, I think the size of the units canceled out the defensive advantages. I still don't think I want to go into that city, but, you know, I took a step off one of the fort units that are brigades, and I really don't like the 2-step brigades that don't have a 2-step marker on them. But so the divisions, the brigades are just weird in this game, not in the series overall. The divisions have this little yellow number over on the left-hand side, which tells you how many steps they have. But that's also how many regimental equivalents they are. The brigades count as a single regimental equivalent, but they have 2 steps. It's just like this, wow, the system's kind of falling apart because of the small scale that this particular incarnation utilizes. And, you know, I think the scale is the right scale. I just feel like they had to kind of, I don't know, bend the system so much to make it kind of work for this, which is probably why it took, like, DAK was not one of the very first games in the series to come out. It may have been 3 or 4, I think. I don't know if it has a number on it. I'm sure it does, but they don't number by series. They number by total games made, so it wouldn't be there. But yeah, it definitely feels like it needed, like, things needed to be bent together to make this thing work at all. All right now, I'm just before, this is a long long term because I'm getting used to the combat system again, getting used to the implications of the game. You know, I've been just shipping supplies for the past couple months, and I think I'm only going to make the one attack still. I think even though I disordered this and spent a lot of supplies on it, I'm having real second thoughts about doing anything about it. The problem is the combat system is just so variable. But here's the thing. That's an actual city. And so is Hell 1 down below. And cities are nasty. Cities have all armor and all attacking mech. And unfortunately, I have a fair amount of armor in both of these stacks. And you might say, well, why are you putting armor up against the cities? I have a lot of armor in my army, okay? A lot of the good units are armor. And the thing it does is it allows me to be pretty strong if the Brits come across. But the way things are, I'm looking at trying to cross and trying to take these cities. And that's really hard with what I've got in the field up there. I think I've got, definitely got infantry there. I think I've got more infantry here too. But it's hard to keep your mind as to what's where. And so I end up at 16-1 here, but it's in the swamp, so it's in very close terrain. I get an AO1E4, which sounds pretty good. The problem is I only got one really good unit, and it is going to take the hit. It's my lead. And defender loses 1 with an option of 2. Well, the defender's destroyed. But I do take the crossing. And I force now the Brits to do something about this and try to figure out what the fuck they're going to do. I don't know what that's going to be. And we got brown counters next to brown counters with shading differences. There's more color difference between each side, like within each side, than there is between British and German units, which really fucking pisses me off. The Greys would have done a lot. Again, I think that's the biggest thing in DAK 2 is, oh look, there's Grey counters for the Germans. That was taxing enough, trying to figure out, yeah, I was across the river, trying to figure out this whole kind of incorporation of how I was going to do the attack. I'm going to recover my disorder. I only have a couple for the Axis. And then I'm going to take a break before I try to figure out what the Brits are going to do. This is getting to be a really, really heavy turn, even though it doesn't look like a hell of a lot happened. I mean, I had like 2 counters attack on 1 strength point unit. But we're trying to force our way across the river, and it's not trivial. And now there's we succeeded, and now there's the maybe much harder problem of coordinating all the Commonwealth units to come up with a reasonable defense. Okay, so for the English response, well, the first thing that happened was, and I haven't rolled the points. You don't get any. Checking for replacements. The first thing that happened was they had to send another infantry brigade off to the Far East. Great timing, man. Thanks, Churchill. I could delay it. You can delay these by 4 turns, but I'll never remember unless there's some kind of marker to put on a unit to say, hey, this unit's going to be going to the Far East or whatever. There just really isn't the components for that. I guess I could put, a number marker in the Far East on one of those boxes and say, yeah, I have to time it down. But, if I get a unit wrecked or whatever, I'm going to be in trouble anyway. So I can take one out of Cairo or out of Alexandria. That's fine. And just ship it on its way. It's just easier for me. But now I got to figure out how to deal with this German incursion. Attempt that with the 9th Australian shooting up and I forgot to spend supply on the German attack. That's 2 tokens I owe somewhere. I can reach down here so I can take it from back here. Spent on all the artillery fire. I mean, the expensive part of the attack. The Brits don't have to spend, they were in range of Alexandria. Likewise, I'm not going to have to spend with the, well, yes, I am going to have to spend with the Brits because I'm not going to be able to reach back. I was barely within range there, and I don't have a headquarters or anything. But I had to spend some fuel to motorize these guys, send them in for an overrun attack that may or may not work. And then after that, like after I clear the German unit, then I have to figure out how to garrison, you know, what's going to garrison where. And it's going to spread my forces out a little bit. For that, I can use some of my disordered units, but I can't use my disordered units on the attack. That would just be a mistake, I think. Funny, the Australians, that side, it's a little glossier looking, it's a little different. But on this side, this looks like the exact same color to me. I cannot distinguish any difference between the two. So, I mean, before I was like, oh, they look about the same because I'm looking at regular Brits or whatever. The Australians and the Germans are the exact same color as far as I'm concerned. I cannot distinguish between the two. I'm sure there's a slight difference, but yeah, you know, you're just getting too close. And double plus ungood. I'm surprised on the attack. Yeah, I had a +2 bonus, but, you know, overruns are risky. I could have really used the surprise in the other direction, but I got it in the wrong direction. And then didn't get a very high die roll either. So I get an attacker loses too. I think I'll take a hit on each of the... I have to spend something from somewhere for the Germans again. But the Germans successfully repulse that attack. And now I have to, you know, keep trying, basically. Those guys are out of movement, essentially. Now, for the follow-up, I came out of here, coming up from this direction. Another overrun. Not as good, but that cost me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think 8 movement points, so I have 6 left. I got an AO1, DO1. If the defender can retreat across that ferry, it seems really unlikely. But the attacker's going to have to take a hit on their lead unit. The defender may be able to retreat. I have to look that up, see if there's anything about that. It seems unlikely that they should be able to, but I don't remember any prohibition. As far as I can tell, I even looked in the series rules to see if there was something like, hey, you can't retreat if it requires all your movement points, although this would have only been half for infantry units. So anyway, they're back across. It opens up the possibility of the Brits trying to slip through here, but this is a horrible place to come through. Neither the Axis nor the Brits really want to cross there. They're a real, like it doesn't get you onto a railroad that you can walk along or anything like that. And now the Brits have to try and figure out how to reposition their forces so that they're defending the line in more places. That's going to open up opportunities for the Axis to maybe cross against places that looked harder before. We'll see how they balance out. In this first turn, realizing that the brigade guns can fire, I get some effect. I get a couple disorders. Okay, great. This artillery too, but perhaps the most important is I got really, really lucky with a shot there on the German unit that crossed and escaped, right? And ended up killing it. So it's now over in the dead pile back there. Conceivably, so I think this is how this would work if I was playing with the optional. You can attack an extra hex after you move, an empty hex, which feels like a bullshit roll to me. Like I kind of feel, I understand the argument of, look, your forces should be able to move further if they're not engaging in combat, or at least as far if they're not engaging in combat. But here it opens up a situation that's kind of unbelievable, which is that, first of all, I'd be able to attack across this. Well, no, I wouldn't. No, never mind. If that was a bridge, I'd be able to attack across that in a way that, like, there was an opposing force there. It's hard to tell. Like, if you fired upon, let's say that was the situation, because I was mistaken. I wouldn't be able to move that extra hex because I wouldn't have been able to attack that hex, period. But let's say something similar happened at one of these bridges. Does it really make sense that after I bombard the bridge, I'm able to occupy it easily? Kinda. Because what if there was a force there that I was planning on attacking, and I bombard the other side of the bridge, I destroy, the force. Now I can't attack it. If I got it disordered, I'd be attacking at an advantage. All my troops are ready to attack. That's a situation where I believe it actually makes more sense than the standard, which is kind of this, I run up to the enemy and there's no one there and I get that extra hex movement. I kind of feel like that extra hex movement makes a lot more sense if you were intending an attack, because you're already aiming for that. But, otherwise it's like, oh look, I always get a free extra hex of movement, right? Wherever I'd be allowed to attack. That feels a little wrong. I think everything's good. I've paid my supplies, shipped some more shit down here because whatever. Because I'm draining stuff. I moved armor, spending supplies to do so, because I'd rather have infantry defending in the cities or in the swamps or whatever. I moved armor down here. Well, this is a village, but it's unattackable. So, and there's an opening for the Brits to try that kind of crazy maneuver. Yeah, the net effect was not that great, but it did strip troops off of the British hard points, and now we get to see if the Axis can do anything good about that. Move the turn forward. I don't think I'm playing another one today. I know I haven't played much at all, and that sucks, but I gotta tell you, it's easier to ease back into things than, to try to push too hard. If I push too hard, I don't know. I might end up liking it more. I really don't know. But yeah, what am I at time-wise? I got about 20 minutes until raid, and I'm still in this clan fight. So it's like, we were well ahead at the end of last night. I threw a lot of resources down, and I wasn't, somebody else threw even more, and then he threw more in today because they were catching up on us, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if these are worth, the kind of expenditure on the account. It's like winning isn't that valuable. It's got nice advantages to it, and it's like you feel like I've invested so much, I have to keep going. But there's also a bunch of dead wood on my team right now, and that's no good. All right. I've gotten lonely. I want to talk more. That's what's going on. So I drummed about the game a little bit. My way of imagining. See my wide drum video if you want to understand what I mean by that. But anyway, I was picturing what happened, reflecting, we could say, in my spasmodic way. And in terms of, ignoring the positional situation where it stripped forces off some of the British defense positions, what came of it all? Well, it's pretty much a wash. It really is. The Axis lost 2 steps of units, one of them very good. Now, one of them was killed by artillery fire, which is kind of a freak shot that could hit anything, but if it's hitting these larger stacks where it's more likely to actually succeed or whatever. But if it's hitting those larger stacks, I can pick shittier units. Of course, it wasn't a great unit, but anyway. The good unit died on the attack, on the actual attacks. The other, on the British side, actually they lost a little bit more. They took 3 steps of loss. And so basically it was like a 3-to-1, just in terms of losses if we ignore the artillery. But again, the artillery is going to be this attritional factor, and it's going to start ramping up and really beginning to tell against the Axis forces. Yeah, it kind of looks hopeless, and the idea of trying to force the river seems like impossible, but necessary, because I'm going to lose the attrition battle as long as I'm facing the amount of supplies that the Brits can throw in for their artillery. I can't compete with that. I can't just fire my artillery back at the same kind of rates, because they have infinite supply and I have not infinite. But even beyond that, I have really like stretched supply. It's Thursday. When I slip into escapes like I did, depression of some sort, but not all depressions are that kind of escape. It's almost like being sick. It's like I can barely remember what the hell, because I was just, I don't know. Anyway, starting this new turn, we got no weather, no events. Brits got the initiative roll. They're going to force the Axis to go first. They see no particular reason. Sure, I could, switch over to movement phase, to non, what am I trying to say here? Hi. He has something that he's going to eat up there. Well, no, it looks like he's digging through the gutter, so I don't know. I see no real reason those extra couple strength points here, and I don't know. These aren't crossings, so those aren't going to be available. There might be a couple other places. They aren't going to have much impact on the overall strength. And I get more firepower. I get to use the reserve guns when I force the Axis to go first. I've got laundry running. One of many things that I've put off too long. I kind of promised myself I wouldn't let it get this bad. It's still one load, but it's a huge fucking load, and it's like, I don't know. I know that's not as good a choice, but I always have a problem. It's not so much doing the laundry, but it holds me off, is I've started to have a really hard time putting it away. And sometimes it's like there for a week, not put away, just sitting in the box. And it's like, when I know that something's going to cause me that much trouble, I start putting it off. And, I put the pain point a little further away. I got some replacement points in for the Italians, but I got absolutely no shipping at all. This, at least, says this only affects cross-med shipping. It does not affect the coastal shipping. So I still have, I don't know what it is, 1 point? We're in September. 1 point of shipping that I can move out of Tripoli. Tripoli's there's not going to be anything left in Tripoli when it comes to month end, which is kind of interesting because there was a lot there. Kind of an interesting call whether or not I want to I've knocked out all the fighter capability that the Brits have. That I can see they might have some hidden somewhere, and that would suck. But once you do that, it's kind of hard to tell, hey, do I want to just keep rolling against the bombers? I did for a little bit until I took an abort of my own. I got big bonuses, right? But losing a fighter would be pretty horrible. On the other hand, my fighter cover doesn't extend everywhere. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Only down to here. Doesn't cut this Helbon force down there, which is quite a large force, actually. So there's kind of a, gosh, do I just want to rock all his bombers out? I mean, I could even reach these guys. And I got to think about this. I really think that you should be able to declare something inactive rather than going up, though. I'm going to look at the rules and see if that's an option. I don't see anything, and it feels like it would be the natural thing to say, okay, look, my bombers aren't going up, so your fighter patrols over that area. I'll just, you know, they're not workable. That feels a little wrong to me. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe what I'm missing is that in air combat you can abort before you fight. Because that sounds, and I just didn't, you know. Yes, you can voluntarily abort. Okay, so yes, you are able to avoid that sort of fighter sweep, and I think honestly that's what the Germans are going to do, is they're going to send their plane out and basically paralyze all the British bombers if they don't want to take losses. To me, that works pretty well. I just, without knowing that there was the voluntary abort on the air combat, it felt like something was missing, but that covers it. And yeah, I mean, the Axis is going to do that because they want to ground the planes. They don't want some kind of British counter action using the planes. Although the Brits haven't been doing that for a number of reasons. They don't want to lose planes. They want to have them for the offensive where they're useful. Another thing that I've forgotten existed was the idea of sending a fighter escort, which I think I used early on. But if you don't happen to manage to get complete air superiority, which the Germans have here, or the Axis has here, then I mean it's all the German planes. It's the Bf-109s that have done this. All of your attacks might be intercepted. Well, your attacks might be intercepted if they're within a fighter patrol zone. I've generally tended to knock out the enemy's fighters instead. But I could see a case where you say, okay, there's one attack that's really important. And I don't have enough fighters to knock out all of his fighters, or to assure that I'm going to knock out all of his fighters and get complete air superiority. But I can get air superiority over that hex, and he can only intercept. Intercepting is not like fighter sweeps. You can't just keep doing it, right? A lot of things in this game. There's a lot of rules and everything, but there's a lot of subtlety kind of baked into them that you kind of have to grasp for to understand, you know? And it makes it hard to play well, which I think is good. Because once you start internalizing and understanding the reasoning behind the rules, then the actual rules start gelling better in your head. So what you hear here, yeah, sure, I'm musing on some stuff and everything, but like with the laundry, I'm in avoidance mode here. I'm trying very hard to try to put something in the way to block, because I've got to make decisions as to what to do, and I got to do it now. I can't just, you know, ship my stuff up to the front and whatever. I got to do it now and figure out whether I'm making any attacks it's easy. This guy can't. This guy can't. Don't want to make disordered attacks. But I have here, you don't know what's in there, how big it is. If I got a German unit in there, a hip shoot might allow me to like get some idea of the modifiers at least, so I know the size of the force. That's how you scout in this game, man. Which feels goofy. An attack here, very appealing, but I don't think I want to do any overruns. I really don't. So what I may do is launch a bunch of bombers with the intention of, oops, I gotta pay to recover some of those. With the intention of figuring out where the attacks are plausible. Now, I think the first choice is there are no overruns I can make here. I think the troop quality of the enemy is too high. Let me look and see if I have any really good units that I'm willing to risk on these crossings. I've got a unit here that's equal in quality to what the British probably have. Unless there's like an old 7th Armored in there that like didn't get hurt. And it could be. There's units still here in the recovery box. I believe there's like a 5 quality unit kicking around somewhere. But here I've got even quality. That means if I get a disorder, I break even. I do not want a surprise attack there. Here I actually have a +1, which means if I get the disordered, I get that. But again, I think I'm going to go with set piece battles. It's so fucking hard. You know, this is just such a good defensive position and everything. The idea of trying to overrun it under this system seems like I'm asking for trouble. On the other hand, maybe I need surprise to be able to get a successful attack, to be able to get the chart shifted far enough. Maybe I need to get exceedingly lucky to bust through. And if that's my calculation, and maybe it should be, if that's my calculation, then I should only attack with surprise, with overrun. Oh boy, because the odds are going to be absolute fucking shit. God damn it. I had a hip shoot going into here. Unfortunately, my plane got hit by the flak, and I still got to fire, but it reduced ratings. Didn't get it. Do I want to keep pumping that kind of firepower into there? Do I want to throw, you know, a regular bombing run and be likely to do some attrition? I was on the 4 regimental equivalents, a little bit above that. So I do find that out, and that'll give me an idea of just how likely I am to be able to make that attack. I've come to the conclusion that an attack here is just absolute bollocks. I have a fair amount of armor and whatnot there. Remember, I'm thinking of being able to defend this flank, and that's why things moved down here that were more armor. But no matter what I'm doing with this river crossing and everything, armor is not the best stuff, going into a city especially. Not that it's great in the swamp either, so don't get your hopes up there. Basically, any armor stops being valuable once you are looking at trying to cross the river up here. It might be useful down here, but whatever. Looking at the situation, I feel like I'm left with one potential attack. And it's not a good enough setup that I want to do an overrun. So I'm going to hold, and there's a good chance the Brits are going to be able to counter it with their artillery, but we'll see. And now I go to the kind of move that I'm used to, which is shifting forces up, moving supplies, although less than some turns, and all that shit, rather than what's really been kind of an exercise in like analysis paralysis here. Not that I've completely, figured everything out that I want to do, but I'm pretty close. I think I'm going to use a regular bomber run there instead of a hip shot. The hip shot didn't work well, but I did learn the size of the stack, right? Because the guys next to it, the guys who are spotting for the fire, well, for any artillery fire or anything, they wouldn't, well, for the planes too, they can't tell me how dense that stack is. They can tell me, they can tell me how big the stack is, which may or may not mean anything, because remember, you can use these divisional counters to hide that. Of course, the Allies can't right now. But they can tell me how big the stack is. Basically, what they can see here is what I can see, over here or whatever. Like, the same amount of information is available by having spotters on the ground next to something as by having, just by there just being units anywhere on the map, which feels goofy to me. Like, I feel like I should have some relative concept. Certainly what the number of steps there are in the space. By being adjacent. Shouldn't know that everywhere, otherwise those counters would be unimportant. Maybe those counters go away. That might help. Like, maybe those counters disappear if you're adjacent or something like that. Like with the like with the bombers being able to being able to decline air combat and just inactivate. There's a way, there may be something baked in here that I'd have to find in the rules. But yeah, right now it just feels really unbelievable to me. Actually, what I'm looking at here is there's a recon optional rule, but it only allows units that are recon units, which I don't think actually exist in this game, but you could define armored cars and stuff like that to have them. They spend a quarter of their movement allowance and they tell you how many steps are there. A hip shoot gives you that same information, but at a different cost. And you could say, well, that's aerial observation. Okay, but feels kind of funny. But sure. I just feel like there should be an easier way to get that information. And a quarter of your movement allowance is a big deal if you're about ready to do an overrun or something. But okay, there is a means present. All right. And yeah, I'm even now delaying on the shift forces upward. Oh boy. To realize, with the amount of steps there are, if we look at the combat table, losses for the defender are always losses and options, okay? You're never forced to retreat. You might get it disordered, and that might convince you, but if you're holding an important line, lots of steps mean you ain't going anywhere. So no matter what I do here, I'm not going to get into Cairo. I'm not going to successfully cross the river. So that's something to think about when I'm looking at fighting something like this is, do I have enough, is it worth attacking on what might just be an attritional situation? I can make a guess as to steps there. It's probably pretty close to that 4, It's probably around 3 or so. And at the very least, when I do my bombardment run, I get, or if I fire my artillery, I get a chance before I actually attack to find. Oh, that's the other interesting thing. Yeah, you get reconnaissance by firing artillery as well, because you get the same information. You get the density shift information off the enemy, which is exactly the same as you get off of what I did a hand waving about aerial reconnaissance about. Whereas there is no way in the standard rules to know how many steps there are in a hex. And the reconnaissance rules, and they're kind of expensive for that piece of information. It's not that big a piece of information. I can kind of eyeball it. I might be surprised if there's one of these suckers stuck in there. Or I might be surprised if there's a bunch of garbage in the hex, right? That's like, you know, I don't know what. But things like this, although they do have a step value, they're company-sized units with no combat strength. Yeah, that might confuse me a little. Okay, I got, just to give you an idea, the washer was well done. Like, now it's in the dryer. That takes a long time, and I had to do a little bit of work down there because I'm worried something might stain if I dry it. But I did my bombardment on this hex, and the planes failed. And what that means now, I'm in supply and whatnot. We hit the reaction phase. We'll get the British artillery getting to fire back. But I'm really in a position where, look, you know, I could commit a bunch of artillery to try to get that. Of course, first I get to see if the Brits hit me with their artillery, because if their artillery disorders me, I'm definitely not attacking. But you know, to some extent, I just feel like it's a hopeless cause to try to bust my way through here, and maybe I should just go back to the kind of play that I was capable of doing, but wasn't doing anything. Right? It's just shipping forces, and I pretty much feel like the Axis has to take advantage of this situation right now, before the Brits get to, you know, reposition, put some lighter forces to cover those crossing locations, whatever, which the Axis is working on as well, getting the Oasis units up there to be river patrols. And the Brits managed to disorder me. I moved the reserve markers off the stacks because I know I want them to be on the same stack. It's just my notation for, like, those units have fired, they're not in reserve anymore. It's not going to make much difference at this point. But when I looked through the stack to count up how many steps it had or whatever, how many regimental equivalents is the right word, I didn't want to attack there. You know, I don't have the kind of force to be able to press my way across the river, period, the end, even though I did this little thing. This little thing, I wanted to take advantage of it. And I hope that's a British unit, this 347. It looks British as opposed to German. But they have the same kind of number, like this is 2300, which kind of throws me off. I'm pretty sure I lost the one unit that looked kind of like this, a battalion that the Germans had. But man, the color scheme, yeah, it was a fucking mistake. Yeah, I think that's it for the Axis. I think they're calling it a day. And again, I come to that same question: do I want to play out a whole bunch of schlepping supply? That is what this game is about. You know, it's about there are these just huge pauses where nothing is happening, and I don't really mind that, but I also kind of feel like, can I just call it a day and say the Axis won? I don't know. And that means we'll be getting to the second player turn. I'm exhausted already, but I only have about 40 minutes left till Raid calls me. I think this turn is all I'm getting in today. That's clear, because I tried to do something. When I do nothing, when I just schlep supplies, I can get, maybe 3 turns in a day, right? But when I try to do anything at all, it gets harder. And I don't feel like I was really that, like, I don't know, a day or two ago. Was that it? Certainly yesterday, but I'm wondering if, I think the last 2 days I've been kind of struggling with getting back into the hang of it. I feel like I am right now. All that movement was really, really easy, which it hasn't been for the last couple days, but making the decisions on the attack has really kind of taxed me. Speaking of the laundry situation, it's kind of funny because my wife didn't have a lot of clothes. I have a whole fucking shitload of clothes. Most of it I don't like to wear, which you'll see from my videos. I also tend to wear the same around the house stuff for like a couple weeks at a time. It just, I don't know, it doesn't get that bad. Like, it doesn't get itchy, it doesn't smell bad. It smells bad when I put it in the dirty clothes pile and leave it in there. So the idea of like, you know, anyway. But what that meant was she would regularly do laundry, and I don't tend to use a hell of a lot. Like, since I stopped, you know, having to leave the house for work, I wear one outfit a week to go dancing, and that's, you know, that needs to be cleaned afterwards because I sweat like mad, whatever, when I go dancing. And then, you know, I mean, outside of that, like, it takes me a while to build up a load of laundry. Now, the load that I have, I kept too long, but with her, she would have to, because she had so few clothing, so little clothing, I guess, so few clothes. There we go. Somehow, the plurality of clothing is in question to me, but I guess it's singular. She would have to do laundry relatively regularly. I think she like changed her around the house stuff a little bit more than I did, but not much. I mean, it's just like, you know, you just don't, things don't get dirty, you know, if you're not wearing them. I guess some people are like, well, you know, if you took a shower, you ought to wash your clothes. Yeah, but I take like 3 baths a day, you know. No, this is on the other side of the river. I think this is actually a German unit. Yeah, it's covering the other side of the river. No! This is just going to be an irritation. But I can't find supplies for these guys. I mean, they're in trace supply and everything, but I can't find anything that I can fuel them up with. I could just slog them by foot, but instead I can move a truck. Now, do I have the 9th Australian truck somewhere? It's got to be fucking somewhere, but it might have been withdrawn. I have the 4th Indian, unfortunately, in the Mideast, which is never coming back, and that sucks because that's a good unit, and I didn't want to do that. And I have this South African truck there. Those are the only ones, but it's possible that this is one that got wiped out or something, because I know something got captured. I don't know where that truck is, unless it's under here. Did I check? So, there it is. Okay. So I can move that into place, expend a full supply point, who cares, especially for the Commonwealth, and then activate these guys. And then move the trucks back to get fueled up and whatever. UPS guy is here again, and this time everything makes perfect sense. I didn't even notice him pull up. But, you know, he was out walking and delivering packages. Last time, I don't know what he was doing. Maybe something fell over and he had to rearrange his boxes or something, because there's a slope there, whatever. Because it didn't look like he left the truck at all. So anyway, the British turn, painful as hell. And it's the brigade artillery's fault. Look, the reserve artillery, I was able to fire them, you know, every other turn on average, and there's just a few of them. They're still annoying because I have to count the stack size of each of the Axis units. But now that I realize the brigade artillery can fire during the British player turn without any problems at all, it's like I have to look and count how many brigades there are, 5 points per, spend supplies in a few places. Basically down here, I have to spend supplies. Count the Axis stack. There's just a lot going on in terms of like a lot of mechanical action with little or no effect. Basically what's happening is sort of preventative disorders being dropped on the Axis units. So that, yeah, on their next turn, they're not going to be ready for an attack. It seems like a valuable thing. Every now and then it might cause some attrition. But boy, is it fucking obnoxious. I don't know how much more I can take. I really don't. It's the nature of showing a static line situation in a game that was never designed for that. And I think a lot of DAK is going to be periods where one side is basically up against the other and is not making big movements. This system was not designed for this game. And I think the scenarios are probably cool, but the campaign is really iffy to me, really iffy. And I always like to go for the campaign, and honestly, I don't really care about the scenarios, right? Like, to me, it's the broad scope and sweep of the North Africa campaign that I want to represent and to see. And this is not the best choice for that. I'm sure Campaign North Africa is not either. I'm still, I had high hopes for Africa, but I think it doesn't beat out Desert Fox. I'm still, I think, pretty positive on that as the best of the class that I've seen. I got a couple other North Africa games that I haven't played yet, and then I've got a bunch that I've played that, like, things like, what the fuck? Well, Africa Core, which to me turns into a geometrical game. Although everybody says it's just the race for Tobruk, I'm just looking at the mechanism in the system rather than the situation. You get this 50-50 die roll. Do you get Tobruk? If you do, you win. If you don't, you lose. It's that simple. Okay, great game. And the other one is, I'm trying to think, there's the Columbia Block one, which I really, really despise. With its little supply cards or whatever, I don't remember. It did not do it for me. All right, I think that's it for today, and we're still, I had come to the decision of, look, it's historically accurate, great. And in terms of like, there were these big periods where not much is happening, just sort of attritional fight along a static front. But I don't know if that excuses it enough and makes it so that I want, am I going to get that much out of the British counterattack? I don't know. It's going to be exciting, right? But damn. And the thing is, this was the theater that I wanted to play in this kind of detail, right? But now I'm seeing, it's not really suitable for it, is it? It's really not suitable for it. Say my internet provider's turned to absolute shit. Here I am at Friday morning, almost it's like 1:20 in the morning or something like that. At 2 things happen in my raid game. Okay, one is an event opens up that I really need energy for. The other is I have a bunch of energy that I'm afraid might expire at that point. I'm not positive. I don't think it will, but it's pissing me off because, I was just puttering along as normal and boom, internet's down again. Now, this was fine. I had like no internet interruptions for most of the time that I've been here. But the past, Jesus, I don't know what month I'm in. I'm going to say 4 or 5 months. Ever since they did some work in the area, it has just been sketchy as hell. And the most recent one that went down, which was for several hours, it's usually at least an hour or two when it does, was apparently like the whole city. So, it's not like the work they did in this local little neighborhood was the only faulty thing. They've just fucked everything up. The idea of like, oh, so you miss your game thing. Oh, how terrible. But honestly, that's all I have in my life now, basically. Like, that is what everything is structured around. So, me missing out on something like this would be the equivalent, given the amount of energy we're talking about, if I'm actually losing it, of missing several days of work or something like that due to an internet outage. If that's what happens. If it dumps into my account, it's a little different. It depends on, however much is out. But, I take a nap or whatever so that I'm able to get up and do this. On the bright side, I finished my laundry, put it all away, which is amazing. That's something I haven't done in a long time. I'm not gonna try playing in the dark, I don't think. It's just too painful. The internet came back in time and I got to do it. So, no reason to worry, but it does panic me whenever anything goes wrong. It is Friday. These are becoming less and less gameplay throughs and more just life vlogs, whatever. Okay, we have an event. Suez Canal was mined, and because Crete has an air unit in it, that transport unit that I'm using to fly supplies, I don't know where Crete is. There it is, okay. That's gonna be nothing can be landed in Alexandria, in any of the ports this turn. And that's actually kind of a problem because the resurrection of this 13th Corps, which existed before, it'll go in the World Holding Box. It's not a big deal. Also, I think any replacement points would go in there as well. I haven't really worried about the port capacities, even though they are much smaller than I thought. They're like 3 full SP. But I don't think I've ever brought in 3 full SP worth of units. So I guess it's okay. And the Axis won the initiative. And now the Brits, let's just do this quick roll. Ooh, they get something home. From the Far East, they get to pick a unit. And we'll send this back, but that's going to have to go in the World Holding Box. I think this is my best choice. And was there something else that I did not check? Yeah, I didn't actually look up the reinforcements for the turn, how they're worded, because it may be like reform in a specific location or something. Because that is a weird unit, right? It was off the board before. Exchange Western Desert Corps headquarters with 13 Corps headquarters. Yeah, that actually doesn't rebuild. I have to find the Western Desert. There it is. I'm assuming this sucker doesn't come back, so I'm taking it out of the game. So yeah, all that happened was the rebuild thing got moved. I'm speaking more about the game right now to try to make up for, whatever happened last night. I roll on the variable reinforcements and I get 1 manpower. That does not make it in. That'll be in the world holding box as well, just awaiting next turn. Fair amounts of artillery fire that the Brits are able to do now. They took 2 steps down this turn. This is really getting ugly. I don't know that the Axis can even stand here and hold a line. Basically, the infinite supply along here and the very easy supply down here with all the trucks that I have, you know, to get something. I am feeling like the attritional effect of units that are in close proximity to each other is just too devastating. And there's no way the Axis can keep up with this and can fire artillery at the same rate. I could try to use my planes that way, but they also are, they're an expendable resource. This is the whole problem. The Commonwealth has an infinite supply of ammo. They don't have an infinite supply of planes, but they have an infinite supply of ammo because they're not paying any cost, essentially. Sure, I have to do a little work to ship stuff down, but it's nothing like the Axis, which simply cannot keep maintaining. Now, how would this change? Well, look, if I gave up this entire position that I worked so hard to get to and maybe fell back to an El Alamein type line, first of all, eventually the Commonwealth is going to be able to get around that line, etc. But also, I'm not in too different a position. They have the railway, which isn't going to be able to haul a lot. That hauls what? One SP per turn. Okay, that's not going to make much difference. The big deal is this is the same kind of range, in fact a little shorter, as I'm getting to Cairo. And I'm basically able to dump enough SP down there to fuel a full artillery barrage. I might run out a little bit. Like I might not have quite as much firepower because here, these just don't spend anything. They're just all coming directly from Alexandria. But also the frontage would probably be less, and maybe I'd get, you know, some kind of better odds there or whatever. But this British turn, it was two regimental equivalents dead. I mean, not necessarily. I could take hits on brigades, but there aren't many. And one of them, I had to take an Italian tank. I think this guy. Not something I want to lose. And I took this corps unit. I don't have a lot of garbage available. Like, maybe some of the stacks have garbage, but not all of them. Most of the garbage that the Axis had has died already. I don't know how I feel about this. Basically, what it comes down to is it is absolutely untenable to be in this static position for the Axis. And, I mean, okay. Like, they eventually were being worn down on the El Alamein line as well. So I don't know. They do get, I think, higher flow of actual reinforcements, but not of replacement stuff. Well, we'll keep looking. This being a Friday, I'm just gonna push the one turn. Got like a reasonable amount of time until raid, but I kind of need to catch it right away, I think. I'm not sure. Anyhow, I'm a bit fatigued because there's a lot of work at this point. It really is. You know, it's getting close. Like before, the British turn was the British part of the turn was an absolute like just pass. You know, I mean, I had to move a truck, and more or less nothing was happening. Now that some stuff happened, but more importantly, that those battalion artillery are all firing out of time, right? Out of sync with everything else. Now I could do the same thing by, you know, when the divisional artillery gets formed or whatever, by putting additional artillery pieces in with the British units and cause the same problems for myself, like in the defensive line. Or anywhere that I don't have them under reserve. The whole point is, it's the reserve marker and the attempt to preserve that artillery capability for the reserve marker that was preventing me from doing this continuous attritional fire, right? That allowed me to do it every other turn with those units. And like this turn, they didn't get to fire because I'm holding them. And I was fine with that. But now I'm beginning to think, wow, the attritional value of that artillery is very high. Maybe artillery, see, here's the thing. Artillery is fairly powerful in the OCS. It's also usually useless because you just don't have the supplies to use all your artillery. That's the situation the Axis is in. They almost never fire their artillery. They have huge quantities of it. They do not have the supplies to utilize that artillery. What it allows them to do is have lots of points where there's a fairly large artillery barrage that they could unload. But there's no way they could afford to just continue with a World War I style fighting. But the Brits have infinite supply. They don't have very much artillery right now, but they're pumping all their firepower through it, finally. And yeah, you know, that's a big difference. The Axis turn is still taking a fairly long time, but I guess the high point is I built a few Italian units and shipped them in. Thereby got these. Benghazi is running low. You know, I'm like not sure where I'm going to get the supplies. You know, the flow of supplies that my trucks need. Now, obviously, I have some scattered down here that could be moved. I've got stuff like Tobruk and stuff that I could move, but those provide me with a sort of a reserve in case the line breaks that I could fall back on. Of course, it's all seasonal, right? We take a look at this, and we see next year, the numbers don't change all that much. Yeah, June is a nasty dip, and June was one of my big increases. Plus, I have more coastal shipping for the resources that I bring in. That June, that big number, may have had something to do with units that came in June. Like I may have had a big flow of units. Right now, I'm not getting many units each month, I think. I don't know, it's hard to remember. That's a while back, right? Anyhow. And I have to think about, there's rules on the Flieger Corps. Yeah, I think it becomes inactive due to a die roll where weather gets bad or something like that. But I think it's off the random events table rather than, you know, a specific chart or anything like that. But I do remember something where they can become active again when they're sent back from Russia because the weather's too bad there. I had gotten into the habit of pumping out at least a month every week, probably a little bit more than that on average. But yeah, my mental state this week has been especially bad. Here, it's Saturday, a rarity. I'm going to play a Saturday turn. I feel fairly capable, which is not always the case on Saturdays. I've had my bath already, and it's relatively early. I kind of want to sleep, but I also want to get this done and then think about, do I continue? Again, that's going to be a constant struggle throughout the next months of the game because I think that the Axis is just stuck in place. Anyway, no weather, no events. Brits got the initiative, so they're going to force the Axis to go first. That means I'm going to be able to get 2 waves of firing, the reserve markers as well as the battalion guns. Spoke there. Wow, these stupid scooter things. it's kind of interesting to see them, but just weird me out because people are traveling so fucking fast here that don't look like they should be, you know. But I wanted to correct myself. Not battalion guns, brigade guns. I mean, I make misstatements often, but I had this fear of like someone catching the idea that I don't know, that I'm like firing off, you know, for every battalion. No, only the brigades. But honestly, there are more brigades, I think, on the board right now than there are battalions for the Commonwealth. So, however you want to look at it. Too exciting, the British artillery is actually conducting counter-battery fire. It doesn't have anything special regarding it. Doesn't even remove the reserve markers as far as I can tell, which would have been a kind of neat idea because then it kind of can suppress the enemy fire, but it just disorders them. The disorder gets removed, and on the Commonwealth turn, the guns can still fire just as well as they could otherwise. Not that that has any effect either, because the Axis can't afford to fire out their artillery. But what it does is those units are not in hedgehogs, and they're somewhat more vulnerable, and they're relatively large stacks to get them under the reserve markers. So it was kind of cool to be able to fire, you know, at better odds, essentially. The effect was, well, one artillery piece got destroyed. I don't know what impact that has, because I have far too much artillery. In fact, I probably shouldn't have it all up at the front stacked together the way it is. But if I do want to fire, I want to be able to get, you know, a really good hit and guarantee that I'm going to be able. It's still way too much. It's still way too much, because I'll get column shifts in my favor for the density of the British troops. Anyway, that's what happened. Some died. It's okay, because the stuff is fucking useless. You know, it's really funny. The artillery that the Commonwealth has is so potent comparatively, and what little they have, and the huge quantities of artillery that the Axis has is fucking useless because I can't afford to feed it. It gets us to the end of the month, and maybe the end of my play. I haven't decided yet. Yeah, I kind of like to be able to make that decision. I probably should have waited and not played, because this is the end of the video. I'm loading it up. I'd kind of like to put in quit, if that's what I'm doing. Essentially, the Commonwealth, nothing exciting happened, but essentially the Commonwealth is able to basically paralyze, they failed here, all the Axis stacks that could attack. I mean, not completely. You can attack disordered, but that's another halving against the halving, quartering, whatever, that the river, I know the river quarters a lot of stuff. I don't know if it's everything, I don't recall. But, you know, it basically means there's not going to be an attack next turn. And that's the impact of, I don't know. I mean, yeah, it just, it really doesn't make much difference. I may actually set up the next turn whether or not I'm going to play it, or the next month whether or not I'm going to play it. But it's really a hard call here. I hate ending games for no good reason. Like, I'm okay with the game. It's just, I think it's enjoyable enough when there's stuff happening, but I really feel like we're going to be in a really ugly position. Like, I wish there was some way to just fast forward and quick play turns. You know, I don't know what that would mean, right? I've got thoughts in mind of something, you know, like Grand Cycle here, where, yeah, there's not much happening, and we're both willing to commit to that, and how can we abstract, the attritional losses that are going to happen, the supply gains that are going to happen, and all that? Opportunities are not going to be available until the Commonwealth has enough forces to do what? That's a good question. I mean, they could conceivably try to force across here. So could the Axis. Both sides have ignored that crossing because it's not optimal, but, it may be a reasonable possibility. I could be garrisoning it, but I kind of feel like I need the troops that I have for the Commonwealth. Not so much for the Axis. The Axis could definitely be covering it. But here's the thing. If either side moves to that location, I mean, I could motorize something, right? I could motorize something, and no, because then it's a full movement allowance. Yeah, if for either side to make the crossing, they have to telegraph it by moving a unit into the space. And if you do that, well, then the other side just covers it, right? So there's absolutely no reason for either side to actually place there. It's kind of like, there are attacks you can make and go where you have to set it up, but then your opponent is able to react and you've wasted a turn and maybe actually allowed your opponent to gain a location, to gain some strength based on their reaction. I don't think that any strength is gained on this, but basically, yeah. There's just no value for either player to do it. There might be more for the Axis because they can threaten it, and it does feel like the Commonwealth's weaker in forces, but it doesn't make a damn bit of difference unless I'm going to be crossing the river or making my attacks. And I pussied out on that on a turn when I could do it because it's scary. I mean, it's not just scary. I'm convinced it's not going to have any good effect. I am going to lose the attritional fight. So something moving down there. Beyond that, I'm also not going to gain the river. Like, an incredible series of overrun attacks might manage to bust the enemy away at a bridge, but yeah, it's pretty unlikely. And what that means is I've got a long fucking run of about a year or almost a year before the Commonwealth is ready to turn around and make their attacks. And honestly, I think the best move for me at this point is to pack it up and move on to another game. It saddens me because I had such excitement about playing DAK. I really did, playing the whole campaign, and I just don't think it's suitable for that. I don't think OCS is suitable for playing this North Africa full campaign. You probably could say the same thing about Campaign North Africa, which was designed for it. But yeah, I don't think it's, and I understand, I guess, why Dean held off. Although this was exciting to him the same way it is to me as a concept, why he held off making this one. Like, it wasn't the first, it wasn't, where his mind first went in terms of applying the system. He probably was fiddling around with the system and was just like, and honestly, I think the old East Front, or the East Front games, I assume are just more applicable. And the reason for that is probably because they're of smaller scope. It's the length of this thing and the amount of downtime that's the problem. Anyway, up it goes, I guess.